Episodes 25 and 26 were the original final episodes for the Neon Genesis Evangelion story, and after watching the previous 24 episodes, you might have been expecting retribution after all of the drama and psychological distress that Hideaki Anno and the developers of the show had put you through for all of its run. But that did not come, did it? Instead, you had a very bizarre outcome, in which Shinji and other characters face interrogation. But what is this all about? Why we had this ending? And how does it fit in the end of Evangelion? In this video we will be exploring the symbolism and the story of the two most controversial episodes from the original run, and the reason why we got it on the first place. This is the cruel instrumentality. Neon Genesis Evangelion was a story like no other, and I mean it, not only because of the original style of creator Hideaki Anno, but also on how it was developed. There is a lot of rumors on how the developing team ran out of money for the ending they wanted. Well, that is not entirely true. The fact is that they were not sure of the ending they wanted. The most developed one involved Seal and a final angel that would come down from the moon. Sounds very familiar. But the story was turning very dark, and TV Tokyo, the original broadcasters, were not so sure about the draft for the ending, as the story was not family-oriented anymore. But if TV Tokyo accepted to air the 26-episode show, why did not accept the final 2 episodes? After all, they were paying for all of the products, right? Well, no. Anno and Gainax only sold a pitch, which originally pictured a very different product, more mecha-oriented. Therefore, they did not show all of the story concept to the broadcaster before airing the first episode because Anno had no idea where the story was going towards to. That's right. Neon Genesis Evangelion, after 12 episodes, was written and conceptualized episode after episode. Anno wanted to show on screen what he felt on his years of depression, and would constantly change his mind, especially on the ending. Gainax accepted that. After all, he is very talented and considered part of his creative process. Furthermore, the tragedy after the Tokyo subway sarin attack in March of 1995 left all of the Japanese society tense and sensitive. This affected all of the industry, including Anno's work, which was airing the final episodes at the time. Therefore, it was time to improvise, and that is the reason why we got this ending. Now that we know the context on how these episodes were released, let's dive deeper into them and see what the creator of the show is trying to tell us. The premise of the episodes is instrumentality. But what is it exactly? Well, the end of the world as we know it is the plan that Seal was working on since they found the Dead Sea Scrolls during or shortly after World War II. In it, a seed of life, in this case Lilith, will collect all of her children's souls and turn them back into LCL, which is the symbolical term to the primordial soup, the liquid from which all living forms in the planet came from millions of years ago, basically turning everyone into one, so all of us can experience each other's feelings and consciousness. To do that, humans need to lose individuality that is kept by another symbolic term, the AT field, which is the unbreakable barrier of the human mind, personal experiences, and emotions. Seal wanted to create an anti-AT field powerful enough to destroy everyone's AT field, and thus turning all into one, and so forcing the next step of human evolution. In these 2 final episodes, we are supposed to be experiencing instrumentality from within, and although in the end of Evangelion we get a similar approach, In the TV version of the ending, we get it a bit broader, without knowing what is happening in the outside. Obviously, we are seeing this from Shinji's perspective. Mostly. Sometimes we see Rei, Asuka, and Misato's, but that is mostly because they are fading into instrumentality. Shadows that are talking to Shinji, and he can perceive and translate in his mind. Episode 25 starts in an interrogatory room with Shinji, and the narrator is asking why he killed Kaworu, who is the first person we see in the episode. This is Judgment Day. Rei is about to decide the fate of humanity, and Shinji is the speaker for the species. This was her decision, as she was pretty close to him. He was close to Lilith. During this trial, Shinji will have to choose if humanity is worth saving or not. At the end will be his decision, but he will have to face his inner demons first before making out his mind. Starting by facing his most recent demon, Kaoru's death. Here Shinji tries to justify his actions by saying that he did not have a choice, as Kaoru was not human, but an angel, and angels are the enemy. However, he did not say this outright. The interrogator has to ask twice, even if Kaoru were human, but Shinji insists that Kaoru was not human, was an angel, and his actions are justified. This is a moral dilemma. Just because a living creature is not human does not mean that does not have the right to live. Shinji is stripping Kaoru of any humanity so it can be easy to accept his decision. Then Rei appears, and we are shown Shinji on a purple spotlight, the same color as his Evangelion unit. Rei asks Shinji if he would have killed Kaoru if he would have been a person like her. Now this is tricky as Rei is a clone between Lilith and Yui, who is a Lilim or human. Therefore, Rei is pretty much a human, the mother of all humans. But also she is a seed from the Tree of Life, just like Adam or Kaoru, which makes them siblings. Rei insists on the question, and Shinji is running out of excuses. He starts asking for help, but this time was not to Asuka, Misato, or his parents. He's asking for Kaoru's help, the person he just killed, the kind soul that appeared in his darkest hours, the beacon of hope in his heart, the one that told him that he had a beautiful one. The purpose of this sequence is to make Shinji to face reality. Up to that point, his only excuse was that Kaoru was an angel, thus an enemy that needed to be eliminated. After all, that is his purpose. But Shinji did in fact have a choice. Kaoru surrendered. He was already defeated. Shinji could easily put him under custody while trying to uncover the truth behind Kaoru, behind Nerv, and his father. There will be consequences for that, sure, but he had a choice. He did choose to kill Kaoru because Kaoru himself asked him to. Thus, stripping Kaoru of his humanity is the only excuse that he has left to justify his actions. Then we cut to his scene with Misato. Here, she's trying to support his decision, telling him that he did the right thing. Shinji at this point had already realized that Kaoru was a person, and he murdered him. Then he admits that the thing that scared him the most is to be hated by his father. Another inner demon he will have to face. His mother died when he was a bit more than an infant, so he never got to know her. So all of his affection went to his father, who rejected him and replaced him with Rei. Because of his father's actions, Shinji would think all of his life that his father hated him. This is something that Shinji shares with Misato, as her dad was never around, and also with Asuka as her mother went insane. The three main characters of the story had similar parental issues. All of these characters went throughout the story denying their mistakes because they blamed themselves for their parents' rejections. Shinji will go seeking for others to need him. This is his main obsession, feel needed. And Misato needed him for selfish reasons, as he was his stability and a symbol that she is not as messed up as she is. That is why they had a good relationship, as two parasites feeding each other in their comfort zone. However, Shinji was always afraid of being betrayed. Therefore, at one point he completely rejected Misato, and she was becoming too close to him. Misato's approval and trust were enough for Shinji in the early episodes, but as we moved to the later ones, that was enough, no more. Then we get to the scene where Shinji is surrounded of spines in a place full of white smoke. Here the director is telling us that Shinji cannot move without being hurt. This is how Shinji sees the world. He cannot do anything without being injured. Therefore, he stays still, in his comfort zone. He started calling for Misato this time as she is the one who had protected him throughout the story. She's the one that had told him what to do and defended his actions. 4 minutes into the episode, and Anno had impeccably summarized Shinji's darkness. That is why when Unit 1 appears, it feels so intimidating. So far, Unit 1 was his tiny bubble that allowed him to be the person he wanted to be. A place in where he felt comfortable and useful. Now he has to face him as he is in fact trapped by the unit. Not his mother, like in the end of Evangelion, but under this context, by the unit itself. Suddenly, Shinji is taken by the unit. Now he is in the same spot as Kaworu was. He is feeling Kaworu's perspective, but without the whole mysticism behind Kaworu's origins. He has to face the monster as a human, an afraid little human. Then once again, Shinji insists that the reason he piloted the EVA is because everyone tells him to, like trying to say that he was forced. But that is not true, is it? Every time he went into an EVA, he did it willingly. Actually, he left Nerv twice, and twice he came back willingly. Shinji is trying to convince himself that what he has done was for everyone else except him. Basically, he was doing everybody else a favor. Then we get Asuka, who is actually not at first, but one of those shadows in the LCL that Shinji perceives, who also is wearing the same dress that she wore in the first appearance in episode 8. The last time we saw Asuka was very different. She was defeated by a depression. This Asuka is early episodes Asuka, the aggressive and selfish Asuka that Shinji knows. This Asuka of course sees through Shinji's lies and tells him the truth. He pilots only because he needs others to need him. Then Asuka goes into a rant in which she is not only describing Shinji, but also herself. Changing outfits. Those are the outfits that Shinji remembers Asuka wearing. This also serves as a transition from the shadow that Shinji perceives into the real Asuka who is wandering in the endless sea of LCL. And that is when we see her on her final outfit, the red block suit. Rei, the judge, has no problem in pointing out the similarities between Asuka and Shinji. This is when we jump to the actual Asuka, who is underwater within Unit 2. Now, bear in mind that this was recreated in the end of Evangelion. But when this episode was released, the end of Evangelion was just an idea, a whisper of a movie that might happen in the future. Asuka here is of course a little bit overwhelmed, as the last memory she had was on her depression. Now she is back into her EVA underwater. She does not realize that she is in instrumentality. Rei 3 understands that Rei 2 failed in helping Asuka. That is why she put herself back in the glorious elevator scene in which both of them had their most intimate moment to tell her a hard truth. Asuka needs to stand out and also feel needed. Then we leave Asuka and quickly jump into Rei. But why the judge in instrumentality would accept to be subject of this trial? Well, because she is in part human, and her experiences as a human being are subject to it. We know that there were 3 Reis, 1, 2, and 3. The 3 of them are trying to figure out who Rei Ayanami actually is. It is surprising that the child, Rei 1, actually has the best perception of who Rei is. Rei 1 say that the 3 of them are Rei Ayanami, as each of them represents a Rei of different times. The child, the teenager, and the adult. All of them very different, but also the same. All of them very real, just like a normal human being. At the end of instrumentality, whoever wants to come back to its individual form can, but they need to want to, and for that you need to accept yourself, good and bad, negatives and positives. If not, you will be lost forever. This is why identity is so important in this process. Even Rei 3 herself has an epiphany, admitting that her creator, Gendo Ikari, uses her as an object. At this point, we really don't know what or who Lilith is, as we never see her completely until the end of Evangelion. We only know that she is the giant in the terminal dogma who is crucified. Again, in this world, the end of Evangelion never happened. We also have had some hints about the connection between Rei and Lilith, most obvious case when Rei met with Kaworu. But we do not know for sure. Remember, this is an alternative ending. So now, in this transition of events, Anno is taking us into Freud's structural model of the psyche, the id, the ego, and the superego. The three Reis, as I explained before. Rei 1 is the closest to Lilith. She was the first one, so it makes sense that she's the id. Rei 2 is the one that learns from the world and have human experiences, the ego. And Rei 3 is the one that accepts her place in the world and follows the rules as established, also resolves the Oedipus complex. She is the superego. Therefore, the three Reis are actually one. All of them together reject Gendo Ikari and reach maturity. Rei realizes this by saying that she is her and her personality is forged by her experiences and the relationships she had with others. This is Rei's answer to the hedgehog dilemma. She accepts the pain from others as long as she has the opportunity to be social. Then, Rei 1 starts telling Rei about a fourth one, as she says that there is another her, another that she has not met yet, one that she hasn't seen yet because she does not want to. This is Lilith herself, as she does not have a human form as Rei 1 described. Rei 1 is telling to Rei that she has no human origin. She is in fact above it. Lilith is a god. Rei is not. Lilith is calling for Rei to come back to her. By doing so, Rei will stop to exist, and that makes her afraid. A white spotlight, a symbolism of the moon. Rei has found the meaning of her life. She knows she has a purpose, and she barely made it because Gendo Ikari and Nerv, all of the medicines and the LCL tank. But now that she is enjoying life as she interacts with others like Shinji, she's afraid to lose everything. Then Gendo appears to tell her that her day has come. We know that this happened before instrumentality. This particular scene was a flashback on Rei's memories. Alright, we made it to half of the episode. We go back to Shinji, who is naked, vanishing in the dark. The whole symbolism of human returning to Lilith is basically returning to our own mother's womb. Here Shinji says that he is growing, expanding, but the image shows him vanishing. He's vanishing because he's complementing himself with others. He's losing his individuality. Then we cut to Gendo Ikari, who is obviously the one who is directing the process. Notice the red background. Red is symbolism for reality. It is related to pain. Therefore, instrumentality is a painful process. And then, surprise, Ritz got dead floating in LCL with a gunshot in her back. And also Misato was shot. Very curious that both of them were killed by a gunshot, just like Kaji, the three old friends. Misato's turned under the spotlight, besides Shinji. We know Misato have kind of a double personality. The cool and easygoing Nerv major that shows to the world, and one that have alcohol addiction and is obsessed with sex. Misato is broken, as we see her picture being taped as she described her experiences as a child. At this point, we know that Misato never overcame the Electra complex, which she was subject to since very young, a psychosexual condition in which girls become obsessed with their fathers. She is criticized by Ritsuko as a way society judges sexually active women, but also she needs to justify her acts to her younger self, a symbol of purity. All of this to the point that she even has to justify why she slept with Kaji, the man she loves, under the judgmental eyes of Shinji, who even though knows the real Misato, he was never expecting to see her having sex with another guy. Notice how in this particular scene the train passed by, which is a symbol of Shinji trying to escape, just run away, another recurrent theme in the story. All of this is horrible for Misato as her deepest desires is to be filthy, but at the same time is a shame of others to realize this part of hers. And then Kaji appears justifying it. Now, Kaji's portrayal in Neon Genesis Evangelion is sometimes used as a way to make Misato uncomfortable. That is why he appears here, to make her uncomfortable with her sexuality, and try to make her accept the person that she really is. Then Misato goes into a spiral of honesty. Here she takes off her heels, which are symbol of maturity, and shows herself by who she really is. She loves Kaji because it reminded her of her father. The Electra complex shows again, and that is the reason why she left him. She could not be happy with a man that reminded her of her father. Misato at this point believes that she is a sex toy, and men only use her as that. They all leave her when get bored and move on, like her father. She escapes reality through sex, and for her lifestyle it was a problem. She has a very important job with Nerv, with humanity. Misato's obsession was so bad that she admits, as we are shown how, she tried to have sex with Shinji, trying to reach his hand just to escape reality. But Shinji rejected her. Then all of the female characters except Rei judge her, tell her how pathetic she is. She is not part of the group because she is filthy. Then Makoto congratulates her. This is her other personality, the professional one. So on one she is a successful professional, and on the other, just a filthy woman. While trying to convince herself, crumbles to reality. Shinji then asks if Misato constructed personality is what a human has to do to survive. Well, are we? Do we have different personalities or behave differently depending on the situation or with the people we are surrounded with? This is a question for the audience. Then all of the characters appear to judge her, not only the female ones, even Kaji. Misato denies everything and insists she is happy, which in a way she is, when she falls into her sexual desires, and when she's not, she goes to sleep drunk as a sailor. So what is happiness for Misato? What is what she wants to be happy? We go back to Asuka. In this sequence we revisit something we have seen in a previous episode, when Asuka was psychologically attacked by an angel. We take a look to her childhood, where she developed her survival traits. The woman voice we hear in the background is saying that Asuka is pretty weird, and rejects her with all her heart. The woman is cold, but she's also the new sentimental partner of her father. We do not know if the dialogue between her father and her adopted mother, in which she says that she can stop being Asuka's mother anytime she wants, as she is not her real mother, happened before or after Asuka's real mother died. Kyoko, her mother, went insane and replaced her daughter with a doll. This is Asuka's greatest fear, to be abandoned, to be replaced, and her father's lover was about to do the same. The symbolism behind the gutted monkey is her feeling. She is being gutted. Anno will be revisit this in the end of Evangelion, where she actually got gutted. The whole thing is telling us that does not matter how big of a strong hero you believe you are, you can be defeated by your inner demons if you do not face them, just like Asuka. Kyoko asks her daughter to die with her as her father does not need them anymore. Asuka refuses, thus her mother dies alone. Then Asuka says that her mother died with a happy face, or just plain happy. She understood that her mother did not need her, and neither her father. She created this fear of being replaced, of being pushed aside, of being alone. That is why she developed the need to become an EVA pilot, so she can feel to be needed. The three main characters of the story appear on stage, asking for what they truly want: not to be rejected, not to be abandoned, and not to be killed. Shinji, who is the real Shinji, is watching these shadows, just like we are, the audience. Misato appears beside him and explains him that he is experiencing instrumentality, and we can hear how the characters of the story talk about the truth. Truth is subjective. It changes as time passes by. No one has the whole truth. There is none among humans. The only truth is our individual perspective, forged by our own experiences. Now, all of this feels pretty unfair to Shinji, because even though he had wished for everyone to disappear, he never did in fact accept the instrumentality. This is the liberty that Anno takes in developing the story. The ability of a talented storytelling, twisting the facts and turning every single circumstance in the story into an emotional drama, no matter how normal the situation seems to be to most of us. Shinji's presence in the audience is highly symbolical, as he has now become more than a character in the story. For him, everything is over now, and the only thing left is to revisit his memories and take the morals out of his decisions and experiences. The doors are closed. There is no escape anymore. He has to face the consequences and make that decision for the outcome for instrumentality. And then the episode ends. Episode 26 is a little bit lighter than episode 25, as we reach to the end of instrumentality and Shinji realizes his own value. Instrumentality continues as we are told, but we are led to know as the episode starts that this episode will be focusing only on Shinji. Then we see this kanji, which means fear, again with a red background. Shinji has to face his inner demons, and this is terrifying for him. But fear sometimes is good. It's human. It's a survival instinct. Without fear, then death would be meaningless. A sequence starts with Shinji, Asuka, and Rei as the protagonists, and we are shown images from the story. They talk about fear. The fear of being unwanted. Shinji and Asuka found themselves alone until Misato makes an appearance and focuses on Shinji. Although the interaction seems to be focusing on Shinji's issues, in reality Misato is talking about the common issue that the three of them share. Then Shinji of course stands up and points it out. He's gaining some courage. Who are others to judge him when they are even worse than he is? Ritsuko enters the scene and thus connects the previous episode with this one, by stating that their emptiness in their hearts is what makes them scared. She points out that that is the reason why they are complementing into one, which are the basics of instrumentality. Then we focus on Yui's grave, a symbolism of what moves Gendo Ikari and Futsuki, and the reason they put instrumentality in motion as they did, instead of following Seal's plan. Yui Ikari is their obsession. The telephone cables are used as a symbol that refers to human connections, how humans connect with each other. The whole narrative of the story is trying to convince the audience that instrumentality is good. It's the solution for all of the humanity's problems. It's the only way to beat the fear of being alone and to complement each other to become one perfect being. Asuka with a red background, she also is in pain. Once a fearless hero has been undertaken by her own ghost. Rei asks why they are still alive. Asuka is straightforward. She says that being alive is the only way to figure out the purpose. But Shinji, he is more doubtful. He does not know for sure why he is alive. Asuka insists that she is happy for being alive. Misato does it also, but as long as she can do the things that makes her happy. Shinji then talks to his father and says that he doesn't like to be alone. Then Misato is talking to Kaji and she reaffirms that she does not like to suffer and that is the reason why she escapes. It is curious that she uses Shinji's own words in this dialogue. Both girls' options to Shinji is to run, but Shinji is tired of running. He has been running away from responsibility the entire story. As we are shown his SDAT with the number 25. He has run for 25 episodes, only to come back to square one. He's realizing that he has to face the consequences of his actions, of his decisions. Again, we are shown Shinji's biggest fear, the fear of being abandoned, unwanted. That is the purpose of the next sequence of images. If running away is not an option, Instrumentality is telling Shinji that the alternative is to be obedient, is the lesser of two evils, his only two options at this point. Then we have a bit of Rei as Misato points out her lack of self-esteem, but Asuka surprisingly kind of values her as she is tired of hearing her convincing herself for not being valuable, of not being special. Shinji and Rei are similar on that both of them have been taught of being obedient, and both of them have quit on something they value because of the fear for losing something else. Throughout both episodes, the audience is being convinced that Shinji has nothing or no one. He is not good enough, not valuable enough, something that he himself is feeling, and the main reason he pilots the EVA, returning to one of the essential questions of not only Rei, the judge, but also throughout the story. His answer is simple. He feels wanted as long as he pilots the EVA. Asuka's case is her mother holding the doll, and Rei with Gendo's glasses. Shinji therefore hates himself. Then we see the green telephone from the beginning of the story, where we hear the characters expressing their hate towards Shinji. That is what he expects to hear from them. He legitimately thinks that everyone hates him. He does not consider others to have other kind of feelings towards him if he does not pilot the EVA. Here, Anno is asking to the audience to self-reflect in our own perspective of ourselves. If there is only one thing that makes you happy, one thing that you think you're good for, then it's basically the same for having nothing. As if that thing happens to suddenly disappear, then you are doomed. You will lose your individuality. Then Shinji accepts this, and we are shown his silhouette with events that happen throughout the story. He is conflicting with himself. He is convinced that he had nothing before becoming a pilot, as he accepts that this is the only thing that makes him special in order to be accepted by others. Asuka then replies that if he has nothing it's because he never bothered to have anything, as he inevitably will end up as her. The day he cannot pilot an EVA anymore will come. The beast that shouted love at the heart of the world. This is a reference to the short story collection of the same name by Harlan Ellison. In these 1969 stories, the author is experimenting with a unique style of storytelling, which is not linear. Its structure is complex, difficult to interpret and analyze. In it, we are told about the final world war and its outcome. If you're a Fallout fan as myself, then you're familiarized with this word, as that the Fallout story is inspired on one of these short stories, A Boy and His Dog, which was popularized in the big screen decades ago. Then, the final title of the show, Take Care of Yourself, which in fact is the message of the story. Shinji, Asuka, and Rei recites a poem talking about the rain, the dusk, and the dawn. These natural events that for some are beautiful things, for our main characters are depressing for different reasons. The rain produces bad mood, the dusk is related to death, and the dawn is the starting point for the pain. Shinji doesn't like the sun because he's afraid of being warm and uncomfortable. This is an unknown feeling to him, while Asuka clearly shouts that she hates everyone, which is the response of the fear of a child to the world. This reflects her fear to open up to others, the fear that what is good can end and left her alone again. Then Shinji's sexual desires are shown by portraying the three female characters naked and close to him, completely out of context. Instrumentality is toying with his inner primal desires by trying to conflict with his masculinity. If Shinji is not able to take what he wants the most, then he's not a man. He's just an insecure child. The sequence is raw but highly symbolic. As Rey's desires are exposed, she wants to connect and be acknowledged. She wants to stay and be loved. And then, the cruelty of instrumentality interferes as it asks about his mother. Freud's most basic principles involve the psychosexual behavior of the human mind to the individual's relationship with their parents, especially the parent of the opposite sex, which is the basics of the Neon Genesis Evangelion story. Now, Anno is not a psychoanalyst, but by him experiencing depression understood this connection, and his work is aimed to make the audience uncomfortable with this reality. Our characters have to face their younger self, the id, symbol of purity, of better times, and once again have to justify their actions. Asuka denies her mother, which is an outright lie, as we know how important it is for her personality. Anno will revisit this in the end of Evangelion. Shinji's id asks him about going back to his dad, but he answers with a clear no. A younger Rei, who is not clear if it's Rei 1 or just Rei, trap them both. They cannot escape instrumentality without facing their demons, and ask them for a reason for their answers. Asuka is afraid for being betrayed and left alone. She wants to be independent. She does not want to rely on anyone else. And then, Yui. Now, Yui is not part of this process. This is very different from the end of Evangelion. In this context, Yui is in another level. Nevertheless, as Shinji's mother, has its role in it, as she has offered him death and rebirth. Yui asks his son why he is not happy. Shinji replies that he wants to be valuable enough to not being abandoned, enough to be taken care of, as we see his father leaving. His father is the source of all his fears, his traumas. Asuka still undervalues herself as we see her at her most depressive state, thin and unhealthy. This is a reflection on Shinji's negativity. This way of thinking is cruel and merciless, and always ends up in failure. Then Anno uses a brilliant storytelling technique in which returns Shinji to his most basic state, when he was conceptualizing him in sketches and other drafts. That is why this sequence is so impactful and beautiful. This is the way Shinji presents himself to the world. All of them, from the simplest to the most complex one, are just the one and only hero of the story. As Shinji loses his mind, Rei, the judge, transcends to her own sketches and tells him that he is him. This is up to Shinji's conclusion, in which everything that he has had an interaction with, from his room to his clothes, has a role and influence in his individuality, in his personality. Then, a hard truth. That is why I wish to my soul to be closed. This is his AT field. If you close yourself to others, no one can hurt you. If Shinji avoids others, no one can hurt him. Now, if Shinji has been like this to this point, why he complains so much that others are not able to reach him? That is why Rei asks him to take care of himself, because others will not. Rei is not telling this to Shinji, but also to the audience. The only way to be happy is if you work for yourself first. You cannot make others happy if you are not happy with yourself. Cannot dream on a perfect being, like Kaworu, to come over and make you happy. That is not right. Once you understand yourself and fight for your own happiness, then others will start to love you and stay with you. Then the female characters show up again and let him know that the world is constantly changing. He cannot sit and wait for something to happen. People move on, change their mind based on their own personal experiences. This is as natural as the winter and the summer, as rain and a sunny day. People suffer and cheer up. It is what it is. We are not always the same person. There is always room for self-improvement, especially if you are not happy with the person you are. Shinji with the white background symbolizes how lost he is. But his father draws a line. So now he has something in which he can stand on, something in which he can walk and develop. In exchange, now he has lost some freedom. He has to accept rules of gravity. This is society, the established order of human evolution. Instrumentality is reaching its peak. Shinji is about to disappear, as he finds himself alone, only with a floor. No one else is in this world. Human souls are being collected, and individualities are disappearing. The humankind is merging into one. Shinji cannot distinguish others because they do not exist anymore. He can only see himself, for now. Shinji finally accepts Rei's idea on others defining ourselves. Rei understood how important is human interaction. The most introvert character of the story gave Shinji a lesson on this matter. He understood that it's up to him to decide the world he wants to be in. And he imagines that world, which is basically the world that Evangelion fans wanted, the audience wanted, a happy one, in which Shinji is the center of attention. All of this, although fun to watch, is just a parody of something we wanted but did not got, and Asuka hopelessly in love with him, both of his parents alive and normal, an outspoken naughty version of Rei, and boner jokes. Evangelion has turned into a classic eki. If we explore Shinji's room, we can find several references to the story. Of course, Pen Pen is a bobblehead, his STAT is in the floor, his cello, and a picture of a girl that is similar to the pay attention picture from episode 1. This is the dream of a boy that has been influenced by his surroundings. All of this sequence is Anno defending his work. He's telling the audience that Evangelion is more than an eki harem story that you will forget in a few months. And boy, he was right, as a quarter of a century has passed, and still Evangelion is a worldwide sensation. In this world, everything is perfect. There's no conflicts, no menace. It's just a simple story. As a consequence, the real Shinji realized that he can be whatever he wants to be. If he works hard enough, it doesn't have to be a pilot. He can be a musician if he wants, and still be Shinji. This is the final message of the story. Hope for a better life through a better self. No matter how hopeless the situation might seem, there is always an answer. There is always a solution. This is also the message to Shinji, who is being asked to open up and give himself a chance to be happy. Then, the characters of the story state obvious things to Shinji, but his father says something really meaningful, and that is that he is not used to others to love him, just like him. As Gendo and Shinji are like father, like son. Shinji again is in the middle of the room with white smoke and spine, which is a representation of the hedgehog dilemma. Asuka tells him that he is the only one that believes that everybody hates him. Obviously, she is in love with him, I might add. And finally, Rei, the judge of the trial, tells him the final thing he needs to hear. Those who hate themselves cannot love and trust in others, which basically means that we have to realize our own mistakes and our own problems first, to then realize that others also have similar struggles and weaknesses. Nobody is perfect. Finally, Shinji reaches an epiphany and understood that he wanted to live, to improve, and be himself. The stage has dissipated. He has been put in an impeccable space to be free and start over. Shinji has overcome instrumentality as he has confronted his demons. He saw his inner self and accepted his mistakes. He's ready to move on, to live and to be happy. And for that, a major ovation for you, boy. Does this mean that it's the end of instrumentality? Well, it's up to you to decide. Shinji has defended humanity through his own, and that is the reason why he has overcome it. Whoever wants to come back will come back, but they will have to face their inner demons first, as Shinji did, audience included. In this image, notice Kaworu's absence. This is because Kaworu's role as the angel who saved him was fulfilled. Adam cannot live anymore. There is no space for him moving forward, for more than part of the fandom decries and denies this fact. In this particular story, Kaworu won't be back. Shinji needs that. As with Kaworu in the picture, he will never be able to be happy by himself. At the end, Shinji reaches happiness, perhaps for the first time in his life. He accepts the other characters' kind words. He thanks his fathers, as his constant denial was the biggest lesson on independence. He thanks his mother, who has been with him aboard Unit 1 since the beginning. But now it's time to say goodbye, as he won't pilot again, as it is in fact time to grow up and cut those nurturing ties. Congratulations to all of the children, to all those who have the cruel and hard journey ahead of self-discovery and suffering, that even without angels and evil factions, still life is hard work. After episode 26, the story reaches its end, at least for now, as we still have the end of Evangelion ahead. Bear in mind that episode 25 and 26 have been decanonized, as the end of Evangelion has become the official ending for the Neon Genesis Evangelion story. Some still argue that this is not true, as Anno has not officially confirmed it, which is false. He did, and he did it on the end of Evangelion itself, as the movie is divided in 2 episodes. Episode 25, named Air, and episode 26, named Sincerely Yours. However, you can say that the original episodes 25 and 26 were an alternative ending, in which we experience instrumentality from within, without the events of the end of Evangelion, as they are not connected. Alright guys, if you reached to this final part of the video, congratulations, as this has been the most exhaustive one that I have done today. I hope you enjoy it, like the video if you did, subscribe if you haven't yet, let me know in the comments your thoughts, yell me on Twitter anytime you want, and as always I wish you all a wonderful day.